Today, we're bringing you 3 anime stories from the renowned director Satoshi Kon. His works often explore the boundaries between the mind, reality, and illusion, as well as the complexity and depth of the human psyche. There's a rumor in the city about a figure known as Bat Boy. He glides around on rollerblades, attacking those under immense psychological pressure. Yet, strangely, those attacked often feel their stress completely relieved afterward, as if they've been saved. This woman is a teacher. Her name is Harumi. She has a split personality. When night falls, she calls herself Maria. She puts on heavy makeup and becomes the object of desire for many men. By morning, she removes the glamorous makeup, changes into plain clothes, and becomes an elementary school teacher. One ordinary night, Harumi had just finished work and was about to go home when her boss told her to take on one more client. This was her secret job. It was nearly dawn when she finally returned home. Then, Maria listened to the voicemail. It was Harumi's furious voice. She demanded to know how long this would go on, but Maria didn't care. She turned around, laid down on the couch, and fell asleep. Not long after, she woke up again, started removing her makeup, changed into normal clothes, and once more became Harumi. She went to visit her student, Tara. Not long ago, Tara had been attacked by Bat Boy. The police were also investigating several Bat Boy cases. Many people had been attacked lately, but he still hadn't been caught. Harumi then visited her fiancé's workplace, helping him organize some documents. Her fiancé didn't know about her split personality, nor did he know Maria existed. After that, Harumi went to see her psychologist. After a hypnosis session, the psychologist woke Harumi up and told her he had spoken with Maria. Maria admitted that she could feel herself fading away, which was why she was living so recklessly. In the end, Maria gave Harumi her blessing, hoping she would find happiness. The next day, Harumi woke up as usual, removed her makeup, and went to help her fiancé again. That night would be Maria's last job. The following morning, Harumi woke up and found there were no voicemails. Thinking Maria had finally vanished, she was overjoyed. She packed up all of Maria's seductive outfits and makeup. She was ready to start a new life. However, the peace didn't last long. A phone call shattered it in an instant. On the other end, someone asked what time she would be coming to work that night. Harumi was shocked. Hadn't Maria already quit? But the caller insisted Maria had been working as usual the past few days. Panicked, Harumi rushed home, opened the closet, and saw it full of Maria's clothes. The makeup had been laid out again. She quickly played her voicemails. Maria smugly said that she wouldn't disappear. The scene cuts. Maria had returned. From then on, Harumi would take wedding photos with her fiancé during the day, and at night, Maria would go back to work. Harumi was powerless, lying to herself that Maria didn't exist, just so she could continue preparing for the wedding. Her psychologist warned her that lying to herself like this would only worsen her condition. Harumi realized she couldn't go on like this, so she gathered all of Maria's belongings, planning to throw them out that evening. But just as she tossed them, she ran into one of Maria's clients. When Harumi came to again, she found herself in her fiancé's office. Even worse, her fiancé had heard about Maria. Terrified, she fled in panic. On the way, a taxi driver told her he had seen someone who looked exactly like her. When she got home, Harumi once again threw out Maria's things. Then she went to the hospital. Tara said even though Bat Boy had attacked him, he now felt completely at ease. All his pressure had vanished. His words gave Harumi the idea of wanting to be freed as well. Back home, Harumi listened to the recordings between her and Maria. The more she listened, the angrier she became. Suddenly, her phone rang. To her shock, it was Maria's voice on the other end. This was undeniable proof her condition had worsened. She could no longer distinguish her true self. The two personalities were fighting for control of her body. Out on the street, Harumi pleaded with Maria to let her go. Just then, she remembered what Tara had said, that Bat Boy could bring relief. At that moment, Bat Boy actually appeared. Later, Harumi was hospitalized and recovering. Maria had vanished for good. Her life could finally return to normal. Bat Boy had saved another soul. 3 people made a pact to hang themselves together, but the little girl in the middle, Kaori, was laughing happily. In her excitement, She accidentally broke the tree branch. Daigo and Yusuke tumbled straight down the hill. Kaori anxiously shouted their names, but got no response. In truth, the two of them only suffered a few scrapes. They chose not to answer Kaori. They hoped this would make her want to live, but deep in these desolate mountains, leaving her alone was far too dangerous. Realizing this, the two of them rushed back without hesitation. Kaori, Daigo, and Yusuke were complete strangers at first, but the pressures of life drove each of them to thoughts of suicide. They met in an online chat room and quickly became inseparable friends. The three agreed to end their lives together. The next day, they met outside a train station. Daigo and the older Yusuke arrived first. After greeting each other, they were stunned to find the third person was just a little girl. Yusuke turned and ran on the spot, but clueless Daigo, still holding Kaori's hand, followed closely behind. Yusuke kept signaling him to let go. Then the two of them quickly walked away, leaving Kaori all alone. Kaori tried to call Daigo, but he hung up on her. Yusuke simply couldn't bear the idea of a child dying with them. Yusuke and Daigo found an abandoned building, lit a bunch of charcoal, then started popping pills and inhaling carbon monoxide deeply. They lay in silence, waiting for death. Just then, Kaori showed up. She warned them never to ditch her again, or she wouldn't let them off easy. At that moment, something unexpected happened. A giant excavator crashed through the wall. The three of them were stunned. It turned out the building was being demolished. Just like that, their suicide attempt was once again interrupted. With no other choice, they headed to a subway station. They decided to jump in front of a train, but Yusuke whispered to Daigo, at the last second, he must push Kaori out of the way before jumping in himself. The three of them stood side by side, behind the white line, quietly waiting for the train to arrive. They were all stunned by the scene. Strangely, the man didn't die. Covered in blood, he climbed back up, and yet the crowd around them was disturbingly indifferent. Not a single person stepped up to help. They three felt this was too ugly a way to die, so they moved on to find another method. They wandered into a park, discussing various ways to die, but couldn't agree on one. Then Kaori suggested, why not take a train and go somewhere far away? They all agreed, so they set out immediately. Before long, they arrived deep in the mountains. Yusuke kept thinking, how could he make sure Kaori didn't die with them? They tied 3 vines to a large tree. They planned to hang themselves while they were off collecting rocks. Daigo secretly loosened Kaori's vine, but the branch couldn't hold all their weight. The three of them fell down the slope together. Daigo and Yusuke rolled all the way to the bottom. They could hear Kaori calling their names non-stop, but Yusuke didn't want to respond. Daigo reminded him, in a place like this, a young girl alone was in real danger. Yusuke turned around immediately and ran back up the hill. Kaori soon came rushing down as well, crying her eyes out. But it wasn't death she feared. She was afraid of being abandoned. Yusuke carried the tearful Kaori on his back. They arrived at a convenience store at the foot of the hill, basking in the warm midday sun. Then Yusuke noticed something shocking. None of them had shadows, but he didn't tell the others. Instead, he suggested they continue their journey to somewhere even farther. The three of them cheerfully hummed a song, walking along small paths, crossing bridges, passing girls posing for photos, weaving through crowded streets. Their song grew quieter and quieter, and their steps grew farther and farther apart. Human joys and sorrows are not the same, but everyone carries different burdens. Yusuke longed for a long life. Daigo longed for love, and Kaori longed for her parents' affection. They were all running from reality, and death was just another form of escape. When exactly they passed away, we may never know, but life goes on. The girl aspires to become famous, allowing herself to be manipulated on camera. And for the sake of authenticity in the movie, the director actually demanded that she perform explicit scenes. With the filming of these daring movies, the girl gained fame. But it also attracted the attention of deranged fans, driven by their desires. These fans began stalking her. She was plunged into a terrifying ordeal. Not too long ago, Mima was an idol singer, a vision of youth and beauty that captivated the hearts of countless men. Her life as an idol seemed glamorous and radiant. But one day, her manager, driven by profit, pushes her to leave the idol group and pursue a career in acting. Mima's devoted assistant, Harumi, vehemently opposed this decision, unwilling to see Mima completely abandon her identity as an idol singer. This marked Mima's final farewell performance, and in the audience, a fan pointed his finger at her on stage, as if he held his idol in the palm of his hand. This fan's obsession with Mima had reached an alarming level. After singing her last song, Mima bid a permanent farewell to the world of idol singing. As Mima stepped onto the film set for the first time, she felt a sense of unease, struggling to adapt to the unfamiliar environment. The appearance of threatening letters, it made everything even more disturbing. Assistant Harumi has always been concerned about Mima's well-being and takes extra care of her daily. With Harumi's assistance, Mima discovers a website called Mima's Room on the internet. On the other end of the computer, there seems to be another version of Mima who meticulously documents every aspect of Mima's daily life online. All of this leaves Mima feeling both intrigued and bewildered. In order to provide Mima with more screen time, her manager even agreed to the screenwriter's request for her to act in a rape scene. Harumi strongly objected, unable to accept that the former idol girl would be involved in such explicit content. However, Mima surprisingly agrees to do the scene. On her way home, Mima leans against the car window, questioning her choices. Suddenly, she sees a distorted reflection of herself, a virtual Mima, which startles her. Upon closer inspection, the illusion disappears. This internal struggle and fragmentation intensified as Mima acted in the rape scene, with the director demanding repeated retakes, tormenting her both physically and mentally. Watching Mima, the once idol singer, being tormented by men under the harsh spotlight, Harumi, in tears, could no longer bear the situation and fled. In the glaring lights, Mima's consciousness gradually blurred, her gaze expanding from the faces of the men to the cameras and the scrutinizing crowd, encompassing the entire film crew. Eventually, she even descended into hallucinations, envisioning herself back on the stage as an idol singer, with open arms and a cheering crowd. But it was all an illusion. When the filming finally concluded, Mima returned home only to discover that all the fish in her aquarium had died. On the brink of collapse, she finally let out a torrent of tears, forcefully tearing down the posters adorning her walls. Mima, overwhelmed by anguish, lay on her bed, deeply questioning whether her relentless sacrifices were truly worth it. The former idol singer, Mima, had shattered into fragments through the repeated torment she endured. On the other side, there is a deranged fan named Mamoru who is obsessively infatuated with Mima. It seems that he is brewing some sinister plot. The Mima's Room website continues to be updated online, and it appears that there is another version of Mima living there in the virtual world. The next day, another unexpected incident occurs. The screenwriter who wrote the rape scene for Mima is brutally murdered in an elevator. Meanwhile, Mima is in a car with her manager, Tadakaro, discussing the situation. In the midst of passing vehicles, a glimpse of virtual Mima's figure suddenly appears. Mima jumps out of the car and desperately chases after, but all she sees is a trail of exhaust fumes. She can't distinguish whether the virtual Mima was real or an illusion. In order to gain more fame, Tadakaro arranges a provocative and risque photoshoot for Mima. With no way out, Mima is forced to reluctantly accept it. As the actress Mima sheds her clothes for fame, she gradually becomes more visible to the audience. Mima's sensual magazine spreads can be seen everywhere on the streets. However, her twisted fan, Mamoru, cannot accept his pure goddess turning into a fallen angel. Simultaneously, the virtual Mima starts reaching out to Mamoru through the Mima's Room website, seeking his help. She tells Mamoru that the rape scene and the explicit photoshoot were not her own choices and that it was all done by the fake Mima. Mamoru, who is already consumed by madness, directs his target towards the real Mima, who is currently filming. Mima's immersion in her roles or confusion about her identity may have caused her to have difficulty distinguishing reality. Meanwhile, the virtual Mima frequently appears in her vision, gradually attempting to replace her. Mima desperately wants to capture that virtual persona, but all her attempts fail. She repeatedly wakes up from her nightmares, feeling like she is acting on a stage or posing for a photoshoot. Her mind was filled with ugly images. Eventually, she holds a dagger in her hand and viciously stabs the photographer below her. Mima abruptly wakes up, realizing it was all just a dream. At that moment, she receives a call from her agency, informing her that the photographer from the photoshoot has actually died. After hanging up the phone, Mima decides to go to the agency to find out more about the situation. However, the next moment, she discovers blood-stained clothes in her closet. Meanwhile, Mima's deranged fan, Mamoru, starts taking action. He begins stalking Mima and attempts to violate her. However, Mima fiercely fights back and ends up killing Mamoru with a hammer. Mima, who was in a state of shock, was then rescued by Harumi. They returned to the scene of the incident only to find that Mamoru has suddenly vanished, leaving no blood behind. Harumi calmed down Mima and sent her home. Once Mima had calmed down, she quickly dialed her manager's number, only to be met with an unanswered call. Unbeknownst to Mima, her manager and Mamoru's lifeless bodies lay in the company warehouse. It was then that Mima noticed something strange in her room. The tropical fish were still alive, and the posters on the wall remained intact. However, the view outside the window was unfamiliar, instilling a silent sense of fear that instantly enveloped Mima. Suddenly, she witnessed an even more horrifying scene. Harumi had transformed herself to resemble Mima's former self. It finally dawned on Mima that Harumi was the mastermind behind it all. Harumi aspired to become an idol singer but failed to achieve fame due to her appearance. As a result, Harumi projected her dreams onto Mima. Witnessing Mima's repeated descent into darkness, Harumi gradually descended into madness. She began to fantasize that she was the real Mima. The diary entries on the website were written by her, and she was the one who killed those people. As for the real Mima, she had to be eliminated. In a critical moment, Mima accidentally pulled off Harumi's wig, and Harumi quickly tried to retrieve it. However, when she looked at herself in the mirror, she saw her true reflection. Awakened from her delusion, Harumi ran into the middle of the road in a panic. A large car came rushing towards her, its bright headlights illuminating the scene. Harumi opened her arms, as if she were Mima standing on a stage. But at the last moment, Mima rushed forward and knocked her out of harm's way. Half a month later, Harumi had physically recovered completely, but her mental state had become even more disturbed. Mima did not blame Harumi for what had happened. This experience made her re-evaluate herself. The innocent Mima, who Harumi liked, was just a facade. The true Mima was the warrior who fought tirelessly for her own dreams.